In the shadows of 1970 Chicago, a fearless journalist uncovered secrets so dangerous that they could cost her life, and then she vanished without a trace. Who was Evelyn Hart? What did she discover? And did she ever truly escape the forces that hunted her? Tonight, we uncover the chilling story of the silent witness, a tale of courage, mystery, and a disappearance that still haunts the city to this day. Evelyn Hart was a rising journalist in Chicago in the late 1970s. Ambitious, fearless, and relentless, she had a reputation for uncovering corruption where others were too afraid to look. But her final investigation into a powerful and mysterious crime syndicate would be her most dangerous yet. It began when Evelyn received an anonymous tip about a series of disappearances linked to a local mob-run gambling ring. People were vanishing, their bodies never found, and no one dared speak. Evelyn's instincts told her this was bigger than anyone suspected, possibly involving politicians, businessmen, and law enforcement. Evelyn started digging, following leads, interviewing witnesses, and secretly recording conversations. One night, she discovered a set of hidden ledgers detailing the names of influential figures involved in illegal operations. Realizing the magnitude of her discovery, she vowed to expose the truth, unaware of how much danger she had put herself in. The night she planned to meet a confidential informant, Evelyn disappeared. Her apartment was left in disarray, her typewriter still running, notes scattered across the floor. Some documents were gone, documents that could have destroyed powerful people. Neighbors reported seeing a black sedan parked near her building for days. A sense of foreboding hung over the city. The police initially treated it as a runaway case, but evidence suggested otherwise. Colleagues of Evelyn began receiving threatening letters warning them to stay silent. Fear spread, no one wanted to speak of what Evelyn had uncovered. Rumors circulated that she had been kidnapped, her discovery too dangerous to let see the light of day. Decades passed, and Evelyn's disappearance became a cold case. Then, a retired mobster came forward, claiming he knew her fate. He revealed that Evelyn had been held in a secret location, a silent witness to crimes too dangerous to expose. The mob had planned to eliminate her quietly, but Evelyn's resourcefulness allowed her to escape. Evelyn vanished without leaving a trace. Some say she assumed a new identity, continuing the fight for justice from the shadows. Cryptic clues she left behind, notes, hidden messages in public places, kept the legend alive. The city remembered her as a symbol of courage, a reminder that uncovering the truth comes with peril. Even today, the case remains unsolved. Evelyn's current whereabouts are unknown, but her story continues to haunt Chicago. It's a chilling testament: some secrets refuse to die, and some truths demand witnesses. No matter the cost, Evelyn Hart was not your typical journalist. In the bustling streets of 1970 Chicago, where corruption ran as deep as the shadows of the towering skyscrapers, she carved a reputation for herself as fearless, relentless, and uncompromising. From a young age, Evelyn had been fascinated by stories that others shied away from, the hidden layers of society, the secrets people tried desperately to bury. Her colleagues often marveled at her intuition, the way she could sense when a lead was more than it appeared, and the way she could unravel complex webs of deceit with nothing more than a hunch and sheer determination. Her appearance masked the intensity of her spirit. To casual acquaintances, Evelyn seemed like a quiet, determined woman, often scribbling notes in a worn leather notebook, her brow furrowed in concentration. But beneath that calm exterior was a mind that never rested, constantly piecing together fragments of information, patterns, and whispers she picked up from the city's underbelly. She had an uncanny ability to see connections that others overlooked, tiny inconsistencies in stories, subtle shifts in behavior, and hidden transactions that would otherwise go unnoticed. It was this rare combination of intuition and meticulousness that made her both respected and feared in journalistic circles. Evelyn's rise in the newsroom was meteoric. She began as a cub reporter, covering local events and petty crimes, but her inquisitive nature and refusal to accept easy answers quickly set her apart. Editors noted her uncanny ability to dig beneath surface-level stories and uncover the threads that linked corruption, organized crime, and political influence. Stories that might have taken months for others to piece together fell naturally into Evelyn's hands, and the more she uncovered, the bolder she became. She was not motivated by fame or recognition, but by an insatiable need to reveal the truth, no matter how dangerous that truth might be. What made Evelyn truly remarkable, however, was her courage in a city where silence was often the safer path. Chicago's streets were riddled with powerful figures who thrived in secrecy, and those who dared to expose them often faced consequences that went far beyond public scrutiny. Yet Evelyn moved through this dangerous world with a careful balance of audacity and caution. She knew when to press forward and when to observe quietly, always aware that a single misstep could cost her not just her career, but her life. Her reputation grew not just among journalists, but also among those who lurked in the shadows, organized crime members, corrupt officials, and others who recognized that Evelyn had the rare gift of seeing through their carefully constructed facades. Even among her peers, Evelyn's presence commanded respect tinged with unease. Many admired her tenacity, yet some hesitated to approach her, sensing that her pursuit of truth could expose more than they were prepared to confront. Colleagues would whisper about the dangerous stories she chased, the lengths she would go to uncover secrets, and the eerie sense that Evelyn seemed to understand the city in a way few ever could. Her notebooks, filled with meticulous observations and cryptic notes, were a reflection of a mind constantly at work, a mind that refused to ignore the dark corners of society that others conveniently overlooked. In Evelyn Hart, Chicago had not just a journalist, but a relentless seeker of truth, whose journey was only beginning, and whose path would soon take her to the very edge of danger itself. It all began with a tip. An anonymous note slipped under Evelyn Hart's office door late one evening, when the newsroom was quiet and the hum of typewriters had long faded. The paper was plain, the handwriting almost mechanical, yet the words sent a chill down her spine. "They are watching. People are disappearing. Look closely." Evelyn read it multiple times, each pass revealing a new layer of urgency. Something about the message felt personal, as if the sender trusted her alone with a dangerous truth that had remained hidden for far too long. The city, with all its bright lights and bustling crowds, suddenly seemed darker, filled with unseen eyes and whispered threats. Evelyn knew from experience that tips like this were rarely idle. Journalists often received vague warnings or sensationalized leads, but this was different. It carried a sense of immediacy and peril. She felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on her shoulders. Ignoring it was not an option, but pursuing it meant stepping into a world she barely understood, a world where criminals and corrupt officials operated with impunity. Yet Evelyn's curiosity and courage propelled her forward. She carefully examined the note for clues, noticing subtle details, the type of paper, the faint ink smudges, even the slight scent of cigarette smoke that lingered, suggesting the sender had been nervous or hurried. The tip referenced a series of disappearances across the city, cases that had baffled the authorities for months. Young men and women, all from different neighborhoods, vanished without trace. No ransom demands, no witnesses, no bodies, just empty spaces where lives had once been. Police reports were scarce and lacked cohesion, but Evelyn's instincts told her these cases were linked. She began compiling lists, cross-referencing details, and looking for patterns in the disappearances. Each name, each date, each location became a thread, and Evelyn, methodical as ever, began weaving them into a story that seemed to point towards something much larger, something sinister that had gone unnoticed in plain sight. Evelyn's investigation quickly led her to the city's underbelly. Late-night drives through dimly lit streets, conversations in shadowed alleyways, and discreet visits to seedy bars became part of her routine. People she encountered were hesitant, even frightened, offering fragments of information that hinted at a network of corruption and crime. She learned about a mob-run gambling operation that had quietly extended its reach into influential circles, protecting itself with both violence and silence. Every conversation Evelyn had seemed to confirm that the tip she received was no random act. It was a warning and an invitation, a call to uncover the truth before it was buried forever. The deeper she dug, the more Evelyn realized that this tip was only the beginning. Hidden behind its seemingly simple message was a world filled with danger, secrecy, and deceit. It forced her to confront the city she thought she knew, revealing layers of power and manipulation that few dared to challenge. Every lead she chased, every contact she made, brought her closer to the edge of a mystery that had already claimed lives. Evelyn understood that the anonymous tip had placed her at a crossroads, to retreat into safety or to pursue the story at the risk of everything. For her, retreat was never an option. The city's secrets were calling, and she was determined to answer. Evelyn Hart's investigation began in the quiet hours of the night, when the city seemed to hold its breath and every shadow could conceal a secret. She meticulously organized the information from the anonymous tip, cross-referencing it with police reports, newspaper archives, and her own observations. Each disappearance became a puzzle piece, and Evelyn's mind worked tirelessly to connect them. Her apartment transformed into a war room of sorts, maps pinned to walls, photographs and notes strewn across tables, and strings connecting people, places, and dates. Every detail mattered, no lead was too small, no clue insignificant. The deeper she dug, the more patterns emerged, hinting at a network of crime operating just beneath the city's surface. Evelyn knew she had to be discreet. Her footsteps were calculated, her meetings carefully arranged in safe, public locations where the risk of being followed was minimized. She began interviewing witnesses, people who had seen or heard things others dismissed as irrelevant. Some were reluctant to talk, eyes darting nervously as they whispered fragments of what they knew. Others tried to mislead her, perhaps out of fear or loyalty. Yet Evelyn had a rare ability to read between the lines, to sense when a story was genuine and when it was a carefully crafted lie. Her intuition became her most valuable tool, guiding her through a maze of half-truths and hidden motives. As she followed the trail, Evelyn discovered a disturbing pattern. Every disappearance seemed linked to the same organized crime syndicate, a shadowy group that controlled the city's underground gambling operations. They were careful, calculated, and ruthless, leaving almost no evidence behind. Yet Evelyn noticed subtle inconsistencies: the timing of the disappearances, the proximity of witnesses who had suddenly gone silent, the faint traces of unusual activity near certain neighborhoods. Each clue pulled her further into the heart of the syndicate's operations, and she realized that what she was uncovering was more dangerous than any story she had previously chased. Evelyn's investigation took her into environments most journalists would never dare to enter. Smoke-filled backrooms, dimly lit warehouses, and deserted docks became her arenas of discovery. She observed meetings from a distance, took meticulous notes, and even used hidden recording devices to capture conversations. The further she went, the more she realized that this syndicate had influence reaching far beyond the city streets. Politicians, law enforcement officials, and business leaders were all somehow entangled, willingly or unwillingly, in a web of corruption that kept the criminal enterprise safe from scrutiny. Evelyn began to understand that her pursuit of the truth was not just about uncovering criminals, it was about exposing an entire system built on fear and silence. Despite the mounting danger, Evelyn pressed on with unwavering determination. The thrill of the investigation was tempered by the constant awareness that one misstep could be fatal. Every night brought new revelations, each more chilling than the last, and yet the risk only strengthened her resolve. She meticulously documented every finding, knowing that one day her notes might become a lifeline for justice, or a map for those who wished to silence her forever. With each step into the syndicate's shadowy world, Evelyn Hart became more than just a journalist. She became a silent observer of a city teetering on the edge of lawlessness, a seeker of truths that most feared to confront. Evelyn Hart's relentless investigation eventually led her to a discovery that would change everything: a set of hidden ledgers meticulously maintained by the crime syndicate. She stumbled upon them while investigating a series of abandoned warehouses along the Chicago River, places where the syndicate conducted their secret operations. The ledgers were not immediately visible, they were hidden beneath false floors, inside locked cabinets, and behind layers of seemingly mundane office supplies. Evelyn's heart pounded as she carefully pried them open, revealing columns of names, dates, and transactions that painted a shocking portrait of the syndicate's reach. The details within the ledgers were staggering. Each page listed payments, favors, and bribes made to politicians, law enforcement officials, and business leaders, creating a web of influence that extended far beyond the criminal underworld. Evelyn realized that these documents were not just records, they were evidence of systemic corruption that could topple powerful figures if made public. The precision and secrecy with which the syndicate maintained these ledgers indicated both their sophistication and their paranoia. Every entry, every annotation seemed carefully designed to be both useful to the insiders and deadly if discovered by outsiders. As she studied the ledgers, Evelyn noticed patterns that others might have missed. Certain names appeared repeatedly, linked to multiple disappearances and financial transactions. She began cross-referencing these entries with the people who had vanished, recognizing connections that pointed to a chilling conclusion: the syndicate had been orchestrating disappearances to protect their secrets. Each revelation brought a deeper sense of urgency, and Evelyn understood that the ledgers were more than just a story, they were a dangerous key to exposing a conspiracy that had festered unchecked for years. The more Evelyn delved into the ledgers, the more she felt the weight of what she had uncovered. Handling these documents was like holding a live wire. One wrong move could alert the syndicate to her presence. She took painstaking care to document everything without leaving a trace, photographing entries, taking handwritten notes, and memorizing critical details. Every piece of information was a double-edged sword, potentially powerful in exposing the truth, but also a potential threat to her own life. The tension in Evelyn's world grew with each page she turned, as if the very act of discovering the ledgers had drawn unseen eyes upon her. The discovery of the ledgers marked a turning point in Evelyn's investigation. Until this moment, she had been chasing fragments of a story, trying to piece together whispers and rumors. Now, she held tangible proof of a sprawling conspiracy, proof that could expose criminals who believed themselves untouchable. But with this proof came an unspoken danger: the syndicate would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. Evelyn realized that the story she had chased so diligently had become more than just a journalistic endeavor, it had become a test of courage, wit, and survival. Each entry in those ledgers was a thread in a deadly tapestry, and Evelyn Hart had just begun to unravel it. As Evelyn Hart continued her investigation, the sense of danger around her grew palpable. The city that had once felt like a place of opportunity now seemed suffused with shadows that followed her every move. She began noticing subtle signs that she was being watched: a car that appeared in her neighborhood at odd hours, strangers lingering near her favorite coffee shop, and the faintest echoes of footsteps behind her when she walked home at night. Each of these occurrences, though small, carried a sinister undertone, signaling that someone, or something, was aware of her discoveries. The ledgers had not gone unnoticed, and Evelyn's every action was now a risk. The threats became more tangible as anonymous phone calls arrived late at night. Heavy breathing, silence, or simple warnings whispered through the receiver served to remind Evelyn that the syndicate she was investigating had reach and influence. Her apartment, once a safe haven filled with papers, maps, and notes, now felt vulnerable. Every window, every door, every hallway was a potential entry point for those who might wish to intimidate or silence her. Evelyn realized that her courage and curiosity had drawn attention she could neither ignore nor escape, and that the story she was chasing had morphed into a dangerous game of survival. The syndicate's power extended far beyond the back alleys and warehouses she had explored. Evelyn began hearing rumors of colleagues and witnesses who had suddenly gone silent, people who had once spoken freely but had vanished from the city without explanation. Every story she collected hinted at a pattern: those who got too close to the truth were dealt with swiftly, though quietly. Even within the police force, Evelyn sensed complicity, as though some officers knew more than they admitted and feared for their own safety if they spoke. The network of intimidation surrounding her investigation grew more complex with each passing day, leaving Evelyn to navigate a city where danger and deception were woven into its very fabric. Despite these ominous signs, Evelyn refused to retreat. The more she uncovered, the more she understood the stakes. The syndicate's operations were far-reaching, touching lives and influencing events in ways most people would never suspect. She became acutely aware that she was no longer just an observer of crime, she had become part of it, a potential threat in the eyes of those who had operated in secrecy for decades. Each discovery she made, each ledger entry she decoded, added another layer to the intricate web she was untangling, but also increased the peril surrounding her. The thrill of exposing the truth was now inseparable from the fear of its consequences. Evelyn's days became a careful balance of progress and caution. She had to weigh every step, every interaction, and every new lead against the real possibility of retaliation. Even casual encounters felt loaded with risk, as though danger could emerge from the most innocent of places. Friends and colleagues grew concerned, noticing her tense demeanor, but Evelyn reassured them with half-truths, protecting both herself and those who might be caught in the crossfire. The shadow of the syndicate loomed larger with every passing day, and Evelyn understood that while the ledgers had given her power, they had also painted a target on her back, a target that would grow larger the closer she got to revealing the truth. The night Evelyn Hart disappeared was one that would haunt those who knew her for decades to come. She had arranged a secret meeting with a confidential informant who claimed to have crucial information about the syndicate's operations. The location was a dimly lit parking garage on the outskirts of the city, a place chosen for its seclusion and low chance of witnesses. Evelyn arrived early, her senses heightened, every step calculated, every glance scanning for potential threats. The air was thick with tension, the kind that makes a person hyper-aware of every sound, the distant echo of a car door, the shuffle of feet across concrete, the faint hum of a street lamp overhead. Inside her apartment, the scene she left behind hinted at the urgency of her departure. Papers were scattered across the floor, her typewriter still running, a half-written note about her next lead exposed in plain sight. Certain files were missing, including sections of her meticulously maintained ledgers that she had taken with her, aware that the information she carried was volatile and dangerous. It was as if she had stepped out for a moment and never returned. Neighbors later recalled hearing the faintest noises of movement that night, shuffling, whispered voices, but no one saw what had happened. Her absence became immediately alarming, though no one could yet grasp the full implications. Evelyn's route to the parking garage was carefully chosen, but the city itself seemed complicit in her vanishing. Shadowy figures appeared in alleyways she passed, cars lingered too long in intersections, and the feeling of being followed was impossible to ignore. Every instinct that had guided her during her investigation now screamed a warning: she was being hunted. She kept her head low, moving with a deliberate calm that masked the adrenaline surging through her veins. But despite all her precautions, the city's underworld had learned of her movements, and someone, or many someones, was waiting to ensure that she would not leave the night with the evidence she had uncovered. By the time morning came, Evelyn Hart was gone, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and growing panic. Her informant never came forward, and no witnesses could confirm the events of that night. Law enforcement was alerted, but the investigation quickly ran into dead ends. Her apartment, once a hub of investigation and discovery, now stood silent, a haunting reminder of a woman who had been consumed by the very shadows she sought to illuminate. The scattered papers and missing documents hinted at the truth she had uncovered, but without her presence, there was no one to piece it together fully. The city, for those paying attention, felt different in the days that followed. A quiet unease settled over neighborhoods Evelyn had frequented, and whispers of her disappearance spread among colleagues and those with ties to the criminal underworld. Some feared that the syndicate had eliminated her permanently, while others clung to hope that her cunning had allowed her to escape. Yet even those who believed she might have fled understood that Evelyn Hart's disappearance was no ordinary missing person case. It was the calculated removal of someone who had stumbled too close to secrets meant to remain buried. Her absence was a void that neither the city nor the investigation could fill, leaving only questions that would grow louder with each passing day. The police investigation into Evelyn Hart's disappearance began with a sense of routine urgency, but it quickly became clear that this was no ordinary missing person case. Detectives combed through her apartment, noting the scattered papers, her running typewriter, and the missing sections of her ledgers. Initial theories suggested she may have left voluntarily, driven away by some personal crisis. Yet seasoned officers, familiar with the city's criminal underworld, sensed a far darker explanation. The very nature of her work, uncovering corruption and investigating dangerous individuals, made her disappearance highly suspicious, hinting at the involvement of a powerful syndicate rather than a simple case of a vanished journalist. Colleagues of Evelyn were questioned, but fear hung heavy in the air. Many had seen the subtle signs of danger that she had faced in the weeks leading up to her disappearance, from shadowy figures following her to anonymous warnings that had arrived both in person and over the phone. Some refused to speak at all, afraid of retaliation. Others reluctantly shared fragmented observations, enough to build a sense of foreboding but not enough to provide clear leads. The police faced a wall of silence, and Evelyn's investigative notes, though partially recovered, hinted at corruption that extended into institutions meant to protect citizens. The deeper authorities delved, the more it became apparent that their hands were tied by forces operating both openly and in the shadows. Threats began reaching beyond Evelyn herself, targeting those who had been close to her or involved in her investigation. Colleagues received ominous phone calls, letters slipped under doors, and even the occasional veiled warning in public spaces. Some were simple enough to be dismissed at first, but the pattern was unmistakable. Anyone who tried to help or probe further risked the same fate as Evelyn. Law enforcement officers involved in the case reported subtle pressures from higher-ups, subtle hints that pursuing the story too aggressively might destabilize powerful figures. The syndicate's influence seemed to infiltrate both the city streets and the corridors of official authority, creating a web that trapped those who sought the truth. The investigation struggled to progress as leads were blocked, witnesses silenced, and documents disappeared mysteriously. Detectives became frustrated, realizing that the city's criminal and political networks had been designed to be untouchable, carefully insulated against discovery. Evelyn's notes, photographs, and the partial ledgers she had left behind were tantalizing fragments of a much larger picture, one that the police were both desperate and cautious to pursue. The sense of urgency that initially drove the investigation soon gave way to unease, as even law enforcement personnel began to sense the dangerous depths of the syndicate's reach and the potential consequences of uncovering too much. Amid the stalled investigation, whispers about Evelyn's fate spread through the city's criminal underworld. Rumors of retaliation, of elimination, and of secret imprisonment circulated among those who had once operated in silence. Every fragment of information hinted that Evelyn had uncovered something far more dangerous than anyone had anticipated. The threats, the silence, and the invisible pressures all combined to create a tense, dangerous atmosphere where the truth became almost a liability. In this climate of fear, Evelyn's disappearance became a chilling symbol of what could happen to anyone who dared to confront power that had long been protected by both lawlessness and complicity. Decades passed, and Evelyn Hart's disappearance became one of Chicago's most haunting cold cases. Generations of reporters, police officers, and curious citizens speculated about her fate, but no concrete answers ever emerged. Then, unexpectedly, a retired mobster came forward. He was a man who had spent years at the heart of the syndicate Evelyn had been investigating, a figure who had witnessed countless acts of secrecy and violence. His confession sent shockwaves through those who had long assumed that Evelyn had vanished without a trace, reopening wounds and reigniting questions that had long lain dormant. The mobster's account was chilling. He described a young journalist who had come too close to truths the syndicate wanted hidden. According to him, Evelyn had been captured and held in a secret location, monitored constantly to ensure she could not reveal what she had discovered. The syndicate had debated what to do with her, weighing the risks of exposure against the potential consequences of elimination. Evelyn's courage and intelligence had, in their eyes, transformed her from a simple nuisance into a dangerous threat, someone whose knowledge could topple entire networks if she were allowed to walk freely. As the mobster spoke, it became clear that Evelyn's captivity was as calculated as her investigation had been. She had been moved repeatedly, hidden in different locations, always under watchful eyes. Each day of confinement tested her resilience, but it also showcased her resourcefulness. Even under extreme pressure, she observed patterns in her captor's behavior, noting weaknesses, routines, and oversights. She memorized critical details about the syndicate's operations, ensuring that even if her life was in danger, the knowledge she carried could survive beyond her immediate circumstances. Her intellect became her weapon, her survival strategy, and a silent defiance against those who sought to control her fate. The mobster's confession painted a vivid picture of a woman who refused to be silenced. He described moments when Evelyn had subtly communicated with the outside world, leaving small signs, messages, and clues that hinted at her presence and her intent to escape. These efforts were risky, and each attempt could have provoked deadly consequences, yet Evelyn's determination never waned. She had not been defeated by her captivity. Instead, she used it to learn more, to strategize, and to prepare for the moment when she could reclaim her freedom. The syndicate had underestimated her, assuming that physical confinement equaled power over her, but Evelyn's mind remained free, sharp, and undeterred. The revelation of her captivity stunned investigators and the public alike. For years, Evelyn had been presumed lost, her fate a grim mystery. Now, through the mobster's confession, a new narrative emerged, one of resilience, courage, and quiet defiance in the face of overwhelming danger. The story of her disappearance transformed from a tale of helplessness into a testament to human determination and intellect, a reminder that even the most meticulously executed plans of control can be challenged by a mind unwilling to surrender. Yet, as compelling as the confession was, it left questions unanswered. How had she ultimately survived, and where had she gone after evading the syndicate's grasp? Evelyn Hart's escape was as daring as her investigation had been meticulous. After months of captivity, she had learned the routines of her captors, the times they shifted guards, the moments when vigilance waned, and the patterns in which they moved her from one hidden location to another. Each observation was stored in her memory, catalogued with the precision of a skilled investigator. She waited for the exact moment when opportunity aligned with chance, when the watchful eyes of the syndicate were distracted long enough for her to act. Her plan was not reckless, it was calculated, precise, and executed with the patience of someone who had studied every variable of her dangerous environment. The night of her escape was shrouded in tension. Evelyn moved silently through dim corridors, careful to avoid creaking floorboards and the faintest glimmer of light that could betray her presence. Every step was measured, every sound considered. The city outside awaited her, vast and unknowable, yet it represented freedom in its purest form. She had memorized the streets and alleyways she would need to navigate once she reached the outside world, anticipating potential dangers and plotting alternate routes. The thrill of each step was matched by a pulse of fear. One misstep could return her to the syndicate's grasp, or worse. Once she reached the relative safety of the city streets, Evelyn's skills as a journalist and investigator became her greatest assets. She assumed a new identity, carefully crafting a persona that would allow her to move unnoticed. Every aspect of her previous life, the details, the habits, the recognitions, was deliberately buried beneath layers of careful deception. She understood that visibility was vulnerability, and invisibility was survival. To navigate her new reality, she adopted disguises, changed routines, and relied on a network of contacts who were loyal but discreet, individuals who could help her blend into the city without drawing attention from the syndicate still lurking in the shadows. Evelyn's transformation into a new identity was more than physical, it was psychological. She had to suppress habits, memories, and mannerisms that could betray her, while simultaneously retaining the sharpness and insight that had allowed her to uncover the syndicate's secrets in the first place. This delicate balance was necessary to continue surviving in a world where discovery could mean death. She learned to trust her instincts more than ever, relying on her intuition to navigate unfamiliar territories and to avoid those who might recognize her or detect the traces of her past life. Every encounter, every interaction, was a calculated risk, a test of her ability to remain unseen while remaining vigilant. Even under a new identity, Evelyn Hart did not forget the truths she had uncovered. The ledgers she had memorized, the patterns she had documented, and the connections she had discovered were treasures she carried silently within her mind. Her escape did not end her fight, it transformed it. She became a phantom observer, continuing to monitor the city's shadows, aware that the syndicate still existed, still operated, and still posed a threat. Evelyn's existence became a delicate dance between survival and vigilance, a testament to her intellect, courage, and unyielding resolve. Though the world believed her gone, she remained an unseen force, prepared to strike at the heart of corruption should the opportunity ever arise. Evelyn Hart's legacy became a whisper that traveled through Chicago long after her disappearance. Among journalists, she was a legend, a symbol of courage, intelligence, and unyielding dedication to truth. Stories of her relentless pursuit of the syndicate circulated in newsroom corridors, shared in hushed tones with a mixture of awe and fear. Even those who had never met her felt her presence in the very air of the city, as if her determination had left an invisible imprint on the streets she had once walked, reminding everyone that some secrets refuse to remain buried. For the city's criminal underworld, Evelyn was a cautionary tale. Her name carried weight and a quiet menace, a reminder that knowledge was power and that those who underestimated the human spirit could pay a hidden price. Rumors of her escape and continued observation of the syndicate spread among former associates and low-level operatives. Some swore they had glimpsed her in passing, an unassuming figure whose eyes seemed to carry centuries of understanding. Others believed her fully gone, yet the fear lingered, fear that at any moment, Evelyn Hart could re-emerge, armed with the very secrets that had once placed her in mortal danger. Among those who had tried to help her or work alongside her, Evelyn's story became a source of inspiration and trepidation. Colleagues who had feared for their own safety drew strength from her example, understanding that courage could exist even in the darkest circumstances. The documents, notes, and ledgers she had left behind were studied meticulously by those she trusted, offering insights into the syndicate's operations and a roadmap for confronting corruption. Her meticulous documentation, combined with her memory of the syndicate's inner workings, became a hidden archive of knowledge, an invisible force shaping the strategies of those determined to pursue justice long after she vanished. Evelyn's legend extended beyond the city's streets, entering the consciousness of the broader public through whispered accounts, obscure articles, and speculative journalism. The details of her captivity, her daring escape, and her assumed new identity fueled a narrative of intrigue and mystery. People speculated about her whereabouts, imagining her living in secret, continuing her pursuit of truth, or observing the city from the shadows. Her story blurred the lines between fact and myth, leaving a sense of unease and fascination in equal measure. Evelyn Hart had become more than a journalist, she was a symbol of resilience, a reminder that some stories transcend the individuals who live them, persisting in the collective memory long after the events themselves. Even as decades passed, Evelyn's legacy remained unfinished, a story without a final chapter. New leads occasionally surfaced, hints that she had left subtle messages or clues for those who knew where to look. Her disappearance, once a tragic mystery, became a living testament to vigilance, courage, and intellect. She demonstrated that survival was not merely a matter of physical escape, but also of mental fortitude and strategic thinking. Evelyn Hart's influence lingered in the lives of those who sought justice, in the silent whispers of the streets she had once walked, and in the enduring enigma of a woman who refused to be silenced, no matter the cost. Years later, the city of Chicago continued to whisper Evelyn Hart's name, a legend caught between myth and reality. The ledgers she had uncovered, the patterns she had traced, and the secrets she had memorized remained hidden from public view, yet their influence quietly reshaped the corridors of power. Some of the syndicate's operations collapsed over time, quietly dismantled by unknown forces, leaving others to wonder whether Evelyn herself had orchestrated justice from the shadows. No one ever saw her again, but glimpses and rumors persisted, a figure in a darkened alley, a woman asking discreet questions at city offices, a quiet observer in cafes where politicians and businessmen congregated. Her escape had allowed her to vanish entirely, yet she remained ever present in the stories, the warnings, and the unanswered questions that haunted Chicago. Evelyn had become both ghost and guardian, a silent force ensuring that some truths never remained buried. For those who had known her, and even for strangers who studied her story, Evelyn Hart became a symbol of courage in the face of overwhelming danger. She showed that one person, armed with intellect, determination, and bravery, could confront corruption that seemed untouchable. Her story inspired those who pursued truth, reminding them that vigilance, strategy, and unwavering resolve were as powerful as any weapon. And yet, the greatest mystery remained: where was Evelyn Hart now? Had she found peace in anonymity, or was she still moving quietly through the city, observing, documenting, and ensuring that the secrets she risked everything to uncover would never be forgotten? No one knew for sure. The city moved on, but the legend of Evelyn Hart, the silent witness, endured. Her disappearance was not just a story of fear or danger, it was a reminder that truth has its defenders, often hidden, always watchful, and sometimes more powerful than the darkness that seeks to bury it. Evelyn Hart disappeared decades ago, but her story, the secrets she uncovered and the danger she faced, still lingers in the shadows of Chicago. Some say she watches from the darkness, a silent witness to the truths the world was never meant to know. If you want to uncover more chilling stories like hers, stay with us and subscribe to Graveyard of Secrets, where every secret has a story.